Tara Graham has had her images published in numerous magazines and is an award-winning photographer, accredited by APNPI for newborn and maternity photography. She's an ambassador for Imagine, Sprout Studios, Pixeloo Smart Albums, as well as for APNPI serves on their panel as a judge, as well as an educator on their online academy. Hello, Tara. It's so great to chat with you today about CICE 2025.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Very excited about the conference.
I know you have graduated from a creative photography program with the highest honors. But take us back to the beginning. Everybody wants to know how it all started. How did you develop an interest in photography?
I have always been interested in art. Art was always my favorite class in high school, even before high school. And I also liked math. And it was kind of a weird combination of things where I liked math, but not science, and loved the arts. And what can I do with that? So I didn't really have any idea coming out of high school what I wanted to do. And I had always kind of been the picture taker at parties and get-togethers. I'd show up to school with the set of 4x6 prints and everybody would share them around. So I was interested in photography in that way, but hadn't really thought about it as a career until I took a couple of years off. It was only supposed to be one, but ended up being 2 years off after high school. And I started just doing night courses at the local college to find out what I might be interested in, because I knew that I couldn't afford to do it multiple times. So if I was going to do a 3 or 4 year program, then I had to make sure that I got it right the first time. So that kind of let me dip my toes in a few different things and figure out what I liked and what I didn't like. And photography was one of those courses that I took. And at the time, the local college did not offer photography as a full program. They had just one class that was part of their graphic design program and a couple other things. But I had to go into Toronto for a creative photography program there at Humber College. And that is how I got into it. So had the interest in the arts all along, but kind of took me a bit to get there.
Interesting. And now of all the genres out there, how come you gravitated towards maternity, newborn, and family?
I actually started out in wedding photography, as I think a lot of portrait photographers do. So I had second shot a couple of weddings with a friend of mine coming out of college. We had been in the same class together. We were roommates, and she had that first lead on a wedding client. So we tackled that together, and it all went well, and they loved us and they loved the photos. So that was a nice little confidence boost right off the start. And then I ended up working for a wedding studio, doing weddings on the weekends, and I was working at a portrait studio actually in downtown Toronto with a master photographer. And I kind of kept doing weddings all along, and I moved from the portrait studio to a commercial and editorial studio, and then ended up working full-time for that wedding studio, doing all their album design and client emails and things like that. And then I was also taking weddings of my own, kind of on the side, and then got to that point where a lot of my friends were starting to get married, and then they started having babies. So I started photographing babies, and I was like, I think I like this a little bit more. So that's how I got started in photographing babies. And then once I had my son, I had kind of been thinking about it for a couple of years. Like, I think a lot of us do this when we're trying to get out of weddings. Like, you tell yourself, okay, this is it. This is my last year. And then January hits and you're like, ooh, that wedding deposit sounds pretty good right about now. I think I'll do another wedding. So I took on a few more. The year that I had my son, I had 6 weddings that summer, and I just dreaded every single one of them. I wanted to be home with him, home with my family. And not that I didn't have a great time while I was actually there, but the build up to it, I was just so anxious and nervous and just really not excited about it. Like, I feel like I should have been for doing that kind of job. So that was officially my last year photographing weddings. And I moved full time into, into newborn, family, maternity, and I also do some branding and headshots as well.
And I do understand you started off as a film photographer, right? In the film days.
Yes. I feels like I'm dating myself here, but when I went to college, our first year was entirely film. So first semester was black and white film, and we were in the dark rooms processing everything. And then second semester was the color dark rooms. And then we had the summer break and we came back for year two, and they had taken out all of the color dark rooms and put in a computer and printer in each room. And it was like, boom, we're learning digital now. There were like 4 digital cameras, I think, for the entire school that we had to share. And the teachers were literally like going home at night and learning and teaching us the next day because everything was so brand new. So it was definitely an interesting time to be in that transition. And I'm grateful that I had that experience as well, doing the film and the digital. And yeah, it was kind of crazy. And I love that I can like relate things to film now. When people talk about dodging and burning in Photoshop, I'm like, I actually did that in the darkroom. So I know what that means. So I'm glad to have that experience of photographing film, but I do love digital.
It helps a great deal to know some of the things we did back then in the film days, and kind of bringing them into digital now. But in terms of maternity and newborn family portraits, how has the transition changed for you in terms of the way you do things?
Yeah, so I didn't really get the chance to run a film photography business because I really only shot a couple of weddings right after college on film, and then very quickly got a digital camera after that. That was definitely, we could see the way that things were going, and it just made sense financially, even if we're buying cameras and lenses and memory cards versus buying film. We could get a lot more shots on a memory card and reuse it versus film. So as a poor, just out of college student, it made sense to do that if I was going to invest in anything big. So definitely jumped right into digital pretty quickly. The thing that I think has been possibly the biggest change, and maybe someone might correct me on this, but I feel like in the film days, we shot the pictures and then we had somebody else process them. We maybe had somebody else retouch them. Somebody else was doing all that work of actually creating the images, making them appear in front of us. Whereas now with digital, a lot of us are doing all of that work ourselves. So we're taking the photos and then we're downloading them and then we're culling them and editing them. And some people are even printing. I know when I first came out of college, it's like, I have to have a printer. I've got to be able to print my own work. And I've given that up, thankfully. But we're all trying to do so much in our businesses. I feel like maybe some of that was not the case in the film days. And now add in social media, and it's just like this whole other layer of things that we have to try and keep up with. So it can get overwhelming very quickly, I find, if you don't have good systems and workflow in place.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's like we do have way more control, but then there's way more work, and things are changing so rapidly that even now educators are going back at night, learning new things and coming and teaching students.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I find even with some of the advances that we think are making things faster for us, like generative fill in Photoshop, I'm now removing things that I would have just left before because, oh, it's just so easy. I'll just take that out. But then I'm doing that for a set of 40 or 50 images and taking out multiple things in each one. Yeah. And that time definitely adds up. So
yes.
Got to rein that in a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. Now, the business of newborn photography is your talk at CICE. Without taking away from what you're going to talk, is there a little teaser that you can give so that photographers who are watching this get to know what it's going to be like or what they will miss out if they're not in the audience there?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm still finalizing all the details and everything, but I can give you a few little hints on what we'll be talking about. So one of the things I'm going to be sharing is one thing that I started doing in my business that entirely changed the way that I photograph newborns, and also talk about the 5 best-selling images that I think will surprise a lot of people. And another thing we will go over for sure, because this is a big one when we're talking about business, is a profitable pricing structure. Mm-hmm. And I am hoping that everybody will be able to create, whether they're doing a la carte or collections or some version of all inclusive. Hopefully, they'll be able to create options that make sense for them, that they know are profitable, and they know exactly how much they are profiting off of each session, no matter which option they're selling. And I hope that that will allow people to get a little bit closer to that very coveted work-life balance. I feel like I have really gotten a lot closer to that in the last few years, been able to spend weekends with my family and take vacations and not be totally stressing about what I'm leaving behind. I'm not photographing like 20 sessions a week and burning myself out. There's definitely been a nice balance in the last few years. And I think that a lot of photographers are struggling with that. So hopefully we'll be able to give some tips to help everybody out.
Thanks for that. Now let's wrap this up with 5 quick questions, rapid fire.
All right.
A shoot that you remember that made you very anxious.
So that would be the very first wedding that I shot entirely on my own. I was already nervous and anxious enough. And then we were doing the photo session and the groomsmen almost got into a fist fight with another wedding party. And I was just standing there like, I don't know what to do.
Wow. Did you get that on camera?
No, I was terrified. I was just like, let's go, guys, let's go.
Okay, 3 things in your bag that you would not be without.
My 35 millimeter 1.4 lens, something shiny, and my lip balm.
Something that you love to do when you're not photographing or teaching.
So my husband likes to say that my hobby is my business, and when I'm not working on my business, I'm working on my business. So there's all those other things besides shooting and teaching, like we talked about the social media, keeping up with the website. I have a Facebook group. I feel like there's always something that I could be doing. So a lot of my time is still spent on that. But number one would be family time. Like I said, I gave up weddings in order to be able to spend more time with my family. So I've really made an effort to make that happen, especially on the weekends. And I was able to raise my prices for everything else when I quit weddings to kind of make up for it, because those weddings were a good chunk of change and they were nice to have. But there are other ways to get there too.
Nice. Talking of family time, a memorable movie that you recently watched.
So my memory is the worst when it comes to movies, and I cannot ever remember what movie I saw, what it was called, who was in it, what the plot even was. Like, I'll ask my husband, oh, should we watch this movie? And he'll be like, we just watched that 2 weeks ago. Oh, remind me what it was about. I'm like, I have no idea. But I can tell you that one thing that I have been binge watching lately on Netflix is Gossip Girl while I've been editing. That's a bit of an older show that I never watched when it was on originally. So that's been my little guilty pleasure lately.
What about a dream vacation with your family? Where would you like to go?
I would go anywhere with a beach and warm sun, as long as there's also a bit of shade, because I am very pale and burn easily.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for your time, for sharing with us a little bit about yourself. And I'm so looking forward to meeting you in April in CICE 2025.
Yes, thank you so much. This has been so much fun, and I can't wait to meet you too.